Sounds great.
And I'd like to welcome everybody here today. With us from the RDA, I believe we have our president and CEO, Sherry Ziller. Sherry, are you here?
I am. Good afternoon, everyone.
All right. And Amy Jacobin, our excellent executive assistant. All righty. I'd like to invite the members of the steering committee to chime in. Would you like to start us off, Mr. McCain?
It'll be my pleasure. Good morning, everyone. Is this our first meeting of the year? Or
It
do we meet
is.
in January? Okay, well, Happy New Year to everybody. It's strange to say that in February, but I'll say it. Happy New Year. I am the deputy mayor of the city of Gary. And also this year, I'll be working as the vice chairman of the Gary Chicago International Airport Authority.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I know Mr. Poland was not able to make the meeting today. He had another commitment. So I believe, Richard, you're on the line, correct?
Richard Morrisroe, City of East Chicago. Happy to be with you.
Mr. Barry?
Yeah, Michael Berry, Town of Porter, Director, Development and Building Commissioner. Good
Thank you.
morning.
Good morning to you. Mr. Monroe?
Good morning, everybody. AJ Monroe at the City of Portage.
All right. I don't know if Skylar York has been able to join us. Skylar, are you here? Okay, might not have made it today. And we've heard from Tim from South Bend. Tim, good morning.
Good morning, Tim Corcoran, Director of Planning for the City of South Bend.
Mr. Jefferson, Scott Jefferson from Dyer. Has not been able to join us this morning. And Mr. Kingen from Ogden Dunes. Just checking. And Miss Leanne Melman from Munster.
Yes, hello everyone. Leanne Mellon from the Munster Town Council, and I'm serving as the Vice President for the council this year.
Well, thanks and welcome.
Thank you.
And then from the RDA team, we have our friends at Policy Analytics, Bill Sheldrake and Dave Reynolds with us today, I believe.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
And who do we have on the line from KPMG? I think I've seen both Vince and Tom with us today.
Good morning. Yes, Vince Nolan with KPMG. Good morning, everyone.
Yep. Good morning. Tom Harmoning's on, and I think Kelly Nelson as well from KPMG. Good to be with you today.
All right, and welcome, Kelly.
Thank you.
And then from MKSK, I think Eric Lucas had to decline. Aaron, who else is on?
I believe it's just me today. Aaron Kowalski. Good to be with you all.
Excellent. And we also have a couple of folks from Beverly Shores with us today. Jeff Benson and I believe John Blackburn from their town council joining us as well. We've been talking to them about the potential for a transit development district in the Beverly Shores area. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you. One more. I think Dave Hollenbeck has joined also.
I am here.
All right. Well, with that, and that's appropriate because it brings us to our first order of business for this meeting, which is the election of a chairperson for 2022. Mr. Hollenbeck, as our legal counsel, would you like to handle that?
Sure, I'll take the ceremonial gavel here and entertain a motion for the position of chairperson of this august group. Are there any nominations? Are there any nominations?
So I have a question for point of order. Since I'm not named on the committee, can I nominate somebody, Dave? Or does it need to be somebody who is on the committee?
It would have to be someone on the committee who would do the nominating as well as serve as the chairperson. Those are roles and functions for committee members.
I think AJ should do it. And I won't pick it up and it'll give you instructions.
Is that a motion?
You're very welcome. Bye. So I can't make the motion. That was just a
That's right. I'm
suggestion.
sorry.
That's why I was clarifying. That's why I just suggested that
You're right.
they ought to do it.
You're right. I was in a desperate mode trying to find a nomination and I violated my own rule here. A committee member must do the nominating and, and in fact must serve as the chairman.
I will motion that AJ become the chairperson of the board.
I will second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that AJ Monroe be our chairperson. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion that the nominations be closed, realizing that in so doing, AJ will be our chairperson. Is there a motion to close the nominations?
I so move.
And a second.
I'll second.
All in favor of closing the nominations indicate such by saying aye.
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 All opposed, the same sign. Hearing none, I think the record should reflect that AJ was unanimously elected as the chairperson of this body. And I'll hand the ceremonial gavel back to AJ with a congratulations on his leadership role here.
Wonderful. And power of suggestion works, obviously.
Well, thanks, Counselor. Thanks, Jeff. Next item of business on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the November 17, 2021 meeting. Is there a motion to that effect?
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
There's a motion. Is there a second? With a motion and second, please call the roll.
Sure, I can handle that. Hang on just a second.
Thank you, David.
All right. Mr. McCain,
Yes.
Mr. Morris Rowe,
Yes.
Mr. York. Not with us today. Ms. Mellon.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Corcoran
Aye.
and my apologies. Who am I forgetting?
This is AJ Monroe. I'll vote yes.
Yes, Mr. Monroe. Sorry, sometimes the obvious thing right in front of my face. Mr. Barry.
Aye.
All righty, and I believe that is everyone.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is RDA update on rail projects.
Sure. This is Sherry Zillard. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes, glad to be with you all today virtually, but I will provide just a really quick update on the rail project. So the rail projects continue to move forward. General update, I will start with the Westlake Rail project. You can see what's on the screen, but I'll add a few more things. So the design builder is continuing with the final design and have delivered several design packages for NICD review in Q4 2021. The physical construction for Westlake is still expected to commence in March as long as the weather cooperates. So that's exciting. Agreements for several of the more complex relocations have been finalized. And the RDA continues to coordinate with NICD and will continue to monitor that progress closely. So that's Westlake. So I'll just move on to double check then. excuse me, all 7 construction packages have been awarded. So all those contracts have received either a notice to proceed or limited notice to proceed, and are either currently underway or beginning physical work once the weather allows, the 2022 construction season. The first extended track outage, okay, so I'll say that one again. The first extended track outage, which will bus passengers from Carroll Avenue to Dune Park Station, is scheduled to begin February 27th until November 30th. And NICD and the funding partners, the state and the RDA, have agreed on the final scope and funding plan for the main construction project. We call that DT1. And we have updated the double track project budget accordingly. And I would say lastly, with double track, Michigan City has selected a mixed use developer for the 11th Street station. So I'll go ahead and take a moment there and answer any questions that anyone might have, Mr. Chair. Okay.
Thank you, Sherry. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the RDA NICD TOD update. Mr. Kowalski.
I could
AJ.
probably, do you want me to kick this off, Aaron, and I'll go ahead and hand it
Yes.
off to you?
Please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, no problem, no problem. All right, it's Sherry again. We just wanted to talk to you today a little bit about the housing summit that's coming up. You might have seen this, you might have seen the announcement, but the RDA and One Region are hosting what we're calling the Destination 2024 Housing Summit. And what it's designed to do is to gather feedback and share examples of how market rate housing can attract talent, and then further leverages the investment in the South Shore rail line. So developers will be there, contractors, elected officials, other leaders will convene to discuss the TOD prospects along the South Shore line, along the Westlake Corridor, and the discussion will be focused on new mixed-use development with market rate multifamily units. And the hope is to address how Northwest Indiana can achieve our regional housing goals by developing more modern housing options oriented towards commuters to the higher paying jobs in Chicago. So various communities will be speaking about their TOD projects. We'll be there, the RDA will be there. We'll be giving an overview on the transit development districts, the incentives that we have to incentivize the developers to develop the district. And we have a few good speakers too that we're excited about. We have the former mayors of Pittsburgh and Orland Park. They'll be sharing their experiences on how these types of housing have transformed their city. Their cities, I should say, the respective cities. So I think we had a slide about who was on the steering committee. Might have been right before this one, but yep, you can see that just really, really quick who's on there. So, you have workforce, we have communities represented, we have the business community, we have the railroad, the Realtors Association, we have Purdue on there. So those are the names of the individuals who serve on the steering committee. So if you want to go to the next slide, I think was the one you were just on. Yeah. Okay. So the summit programming. So here's an idea of the agenda for the day. I won't, read it line by line, but it will be at Valparaiso University. It's from 1 to 4 on February 28th. So here's an idea of the agenda. There'll be a welcome. And then we just, go into our speakers. We'll have the case studies by the former mayor of Portland. The next part is when the RDA And we'll team up with Ganayar a little bit in this section to talk about local projects and TOD impacts. Then the next section is when the communities will present their TODs. And then we'll have a feedback part of it, and that should wrap it up. So I think I just have one more slide here. Yeah, okay. So just to get an idea of what the RDA's part of this is going to look like. So this is our outline as of today, what it looks like. So we'll start off with defining the issue. Does the region have the housing stock that's needed for the 21st century and to support TOD, and what's happening right now in our region? So we'll be able to talk about that, the state of the market, the national real estate trends. And I think that's where Pete Novak from Ganayar will be able to add some insight there. And then we'll go ahead and transition into, what's the RDA's role in all of this, and talk about the regional and community leadership. We'll go ahead and provide the rail updates and the TDD boundaries. We'll talk about that, and then we'll jump right into what are we doing in Northwest Indiana to make TOD happen? What is a transit development district? Definition of TOD, benefits, trends, things like that, and the ways that TDD and TOD can support the economic development. And then we get into characteristics of high quality walkable TOD development, market rate housing choices, development opportunities. We'll go ahead and have our website there, the NWI TDD. We'll go ahead and introduce that to the crowd. So that was a lot of information, but wanted to give you an idea of what the Housing Summit is. We thought it was an appropriate time to talk with the members of the steering committee about that. And I'm sure there's going to be plenty of questions. What I wanted to do was turn it over to Aaron Kowalski from MKSK, because he's going to add more color onto some of these bulleted items in this list right now. So he'll dive in a little bit deeper into those areas, and he'll provide additional updates. So Mr. Chair, I'll leave it up to you if you want to take some questions now, or if you would like to have Aaron Kowalski continue on with the presentation, and we can save the questions till a little bit later.
Yeah, so members of the board, are there any questions for Sherry, or would you like to have Aaron continue?
This is Leanne Mellon. I had a question. I see in the chat, someone is asking if this is open to the public, this presentation, or if it isn't, will the presentation be available to view?
Yeah, okay, so it is not. So One Region's putting this on also, so it is not open to the public, and I can check into the presentation materials afterwards and see what we can do for that. But I know that they have limited capacity there, and there is a way to sign up and to register. So there is a wait list from what I understand, and I think I could be corrected, but I think if you go to the One Region's website, that's where you can register for the event.
Okay, but as far as, but the materials, I can see, there looks like there's going to be, I'm registered for it, but there's going to be quite a bit of information shared, and I can see, residents of the community being being interested in seeing what was, discussed. So
yeah, Leanne, that's a good point. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be able to share it. Yeah, so let me do this. Let me talk to One Region and the steering committee, but I'm sure it's not going to be a problem. We just haven't got to that question yet, but I'll find out, but it shouldn't be a problem.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry, and great question. Are there any other questions? Or shall we have Aaron continue? Hearing none. Aaron, if you would continue with the presentation, please.
Thank you. So you all have probably seen this slide before, but I thought this would be a good moment to give everyone an update on where we are in drafting the TDD districts. And we've completed 7 districts at this point. So in draft format, Munster Dyer Main Street, Munster Ridge Road, Hammond Gateway, and downtown, one district, East Chicago, Gary Miller, Portage, Ogden Dunes, and Michigan City. Within those districts, we have some recommendations for slight modifications in the Dyer portion of the Munster Dyer Main Street TDD, the Gary Miller TDD, and the Michigan City TDD. So we've received those from the local units. Again, those are in draft format. So we're evaluating those changes. And specific to Gary, we're actually meeting with them on Friday on the TOD front, and we'll be confirming those changes with them. So that's an update on the boundary. As far as kind of TDD is concerned, I think one thing we wanted to mention here is that, as we're thinking about TDD and TOD and those two acronyms that are very similar in nature, TDD is a way to help implement TOD. So TDD is the financial mechanism, or is a financial mechanism that can help support the TOD development. And then that's kind of a good segue to kind of the TOD planning that we've been working on over the last several months and have been engaging with most of you all on pretty actively. And we thought it would be good to just give an update of kind of where we are with each community, and as well as provide an overview of some of the high level opportunities that we've been exploring with the local units. Next slide, please. So, and all of this information is up on our website if you'd like to utilize this for conversations. One thing that we're really trying to point to is a succinct definition of TOD, which is supported and kind of defined by the Federal Transit Administration. And so these types of developments are dense, walkable, mixed-use areas centered around or located near a transit station. And this concentration of development fosters a vibrant, connected community as a result of increased access to jobs, amenities, businesses, and housing. This area, which is TOD, also emphasizes non-motorized infrastructure, less reliance on autos, improved safety, congestion mitigation, environmental resiliency, and quality of life. So as we're having these conversations in the communities, we're really trying to use this succinct definition that's supported by the Federal Transit Administration as kind of our baseline for work. And what we've then developed are a set of benefits, which we'll be sharing out at the Housing Summit, but we're also using to talk with the general public about the value of TOD. And of course, the Housing Summit is specific to housing, but there's other benefits of TOD that I think all of us in this group probably understand, but it really is allowing us to see a different future for Northwest Indiana and to realize a higher quality as well as a different quality of development, different types of development than a lot of our communities are used to seeing. So that's really kind of a good point to kind of segue as to some of the benefits of TDD and TOD working together to achieve a common goal. Go to the next slide, please. So when we are conducting the Housing Summit, this is kind of a preview of a couple of the slides, but just to give you a flavor of kind of the level of detail we'll be going into, this explains that, a TDD area can leverage TDD proceeds that will, of course, act like a TIF to unlock TOD development that might otherwise struggle to attract capital. So we're going to be going through kind of at a very high level the value of TDD, how it's unique, how these partnerships with the RDA and in particular the TOD planning process that's underway right now is helping build capacity in the local communities, get local communities ready from a planning perspective for that development, understanding not only the potential impacts of different levels of development or different thresholds of development, but looking at road infrastructure that may need to be upgraded to accommodate development, utility infrastructure that may need some investments in the future, and then really trying to understand how this all knits together into the community and to ensure that we're kind of uplifting the communities and helping embrace their goals on how they want to go through this process. Next slide, please. So the anticipated benefits of kind of these two processes working together, all of you are by this point probably familiar and to some extent involved in the TOD planning that we've been doing over the last several months. But we really are bringing value to the local communities by helping think through TOD strategically from a future land use and zoning perspective, and getting communities ready for that type of development, helping provide draft language that then could get adopted into comprehensive plan updates and or zoning updates that really can help, from a policy perspective as well as a legislative perspective, local legislative perspective, kind of drive home the kind of development that people want to see. We're providing development advice, so we're providing realistic development tests, as we call them, or development planning on priority sites of the local communities in each of these TOD areas. We're doing kind of real-time development scenarios for these areas based on best practices, based on the wishes of the local communities and the densities that they want to see in these areas, the types of development that the local communities want to see, the connections to various trails and roads. So all of this is kind of coming together in a detailed and three-dimensional format. And then we're working to determine population impacts, including school-age kids, potential job impacts, potential traffic impacts of these areas so that the communities can make very informed land use choices as we're moving forward with these land use and zoning recommendations. So we want to be able to quantify kind of the value of development from an impacts perspective in perhaps a more detailed way than a lot of our processes in Northwest Indiana have focused on in the past. And then all that'll get to, recommendations for, not only how ready are the communities from a TOD perspective today, but what are the critical steps that need to be taken to get them there in the future, and where some of those shovel-ready projects might be. There's a lot of communities that have publicly owned lands, for instance, that could go to RFP. Some communities have already taken property to RFP, for instance, Michigan City and City of Portage. So, communities are already moving in kind of a forward direction to support economic development in these areas. And then collaboration with cities and towns. We don't want to discount any of the good work that you all are doing. If anything, we want to be able to embrace that work, bring it forward, perhaps at times go a little bit more detailed than previous plans were able to, and really figure out what are the key items that the local communities need. And that's really what we're focused on right now, is kind of bringing that to the forefront. Next slide, please. And as we think about, housing specific to the summit, and this is not necessarily a slide that we'll be sharing during the summit, but I thought it would be important to explain. We've been getting a lot of community questions as we've been working through this TOD process about, what kind of housing is out there outside of single family suburban housing or traditional neighborhood housing, downtown commercial housing, or, above downtown commercial, multifamily condos, townhomes, what else is out there? And so through the Housing Summit, we're going to be providing a variety of kind of case studies and options showing different places that are seeing different kinds of investment tied to TOD in particular, but that could be explored elsewhere in the community too. Next slide. And then, really thinking through in a detailed way, both the characteristics of and the outcomes of, creating high quality walkable TOD development, market rate housing choices, how this can create neighborhoods that are linked back not only to transit, but neighborhoods and places that exist in the communities today, how new types of housing can be integrated in a way to enhance the ability for different products to be offered that attract people from the Chicago area, people to retire to, young families, people just out of college, different housing types, diversity of housing that really can be embraced in a way that's walkable, can connect to the great trail networks that exist in Northwest Indiana, as well as the ones that are planned and funded, such as the Marquette Trail. How do we embrace kind of creating places in downtown areas and areas that we're calling kind of mixed use villages that are kind of the right scale and right size to the communities, but are really created as a place that people want to visit and people want to invest in with those amenities people want, and ultimately kind of the synergy between public space, linkages to transit, and then private investment. Next slide, please. So I guess with that, I think we were going to wait to the end for questions. So we will definitely get to questions if you want to save them up. But I'd like to, while we have a few minutes, give a very brief update on the TOD planning that we have underway. Next slide, please. We have a number of tasks that are within the, and Rob, if you could mute your, thank you. We have a number of tasks that are underway as part of the TOD planning process, and we are, I would say, in process with most of these. Our task one is kind of our initial analysis and work sessions. So we've completed work sessions as of today for all of our Group A communities and most of our Group B communities. If you recall, we had an earlier meeting where we kind of mapped those out. We're in process with Gary Miller, so we're going to be focused on that meeting actually on Friday. So having that work session with them where we really are digging deep in about a 2-hour format into community priorities, and then working to schedule a meeting with Ogden Dunes here in early March. So we are kind of at a place where, at least with our initial areas, we've completed our analysis. There may be some other areas we look at as part of this process as further TDD boundaries are developed in the near future. And we'd be happy to answer any questions. And I know that Dave Wellman mentioned there's a couple communities we're having those conversations with. So if you're not on this list, it's because there's not a TDD boundary yet in the area. And if we can of course talk through that offline in more detail. Task 2, land use mapping and projections. So we've put together future land use, what we're calling place district descriptions. And I'll give a preview of those here in a moment. We've drafted some of the land use potential, kind of high level land use place mapping, and inserted some ideas about building types that could occur or would be recommended to occur in each of these TOD areas. And as we're thinking about TOD, you know, we're trying to be as kind of tailored as possible to the local communities, noting that throughout Northwest Indiana, the communities are in different places from a TOD perspective. And there are some areas that are complementary to TOD that still can be that good quality walkable development. We want to be sure to include that information as well as we're thinking through our focus on not only the TDD boundaries and doing good planning for those areas, but the neighborhoods that may be within a close walkable proximity to those adjacent. In process, so as we kind of get a little bit further down the path of land use mapping, we're going to be doing 5, 10, and 20-year future land use projections tied to the development work that we're kind of underway with a lot of the communities under Task 5, which I'll talk about here in a moment. Zoning analysis, we have a team of planners focused on analyzing zoning for a lot of the communities. And what we've done is put together kind of a zoning analysis report. So we're going to be reaching out to those communities where we've completed the initial work sessions here in the next few weeks to schedule another work session focused on potential for future land use, integrating that potential future land use into mapping that could be updated as part of future comprehensive plan updates, and then starting to think about zoning, and in particular dialing in on specific questions that a lot of the local communities shared with us in the work sessions about zoning. Some of those things are about parking. Some of those things are about density, different housing types, different building types, frontage types. So we're working hard to address a lot of those questions specific to the local communities, as well as to give the local communities a good sense of how their ordinances today work, how they would work for future development, and what potential modifications could be needed so that we can take a tailored approach towards TOD zoning and Task 4, which is a task that's coming soon. We'll be creating kind of what we're calling a TOD zoning template that could be adopted as either a district, an overlay, or even as a PUD for a specific area. And then we'll be customizing those in a calibrated way. And as I mentioned, we're going to have a specific focus on parking corridor and housing best practices from a zoning perspective. Task 5 is development planning and, excuse me. Sorry about that. Task 5 is development planning, and so underway. We've been doing planning sketches and impact analysis showing real-time impacts of potential development in priority areas as informed by the local communities. So we're going to be scheduling meetings here in the near future for the first 3, so Munster, Hammond, and Portage, where all of that work is underway and being informed by specific needs of each of those communities. And then since we've gotten through a lot of our work sessions, we're doing the same for Dyer, East Chicago, Gary Miller, and Michigan City, as we have worked to evaluate different sites as determined by the communities and the meetings that we've had locally. We continue to work closely with NICD, and in particular looking at infrastructure and brownfield analysis with the various communities, as well as providing assistance and feedback as we're reviewing various corridors, sites adjacent to the NICD train sites along both the double track and Westlake corridors. And I'm getting to the end of the list here. Capital projects planning is coming soon. We'll have cost estimates that can be inserted kind of once we have this full picture of what infrastructure as well as what public improvements might be needed to support TOD. Our engineers will assign an order of magnitude cost estimate to those so that we can start planning around what these future investments could be. And then tracking performance, we've put together a project layout. We continue to update the website. We put together some TOD readiness analysis based on best practices, looking at documents that have been done in the area, as well as some research of our own and meeting with the communities. We are putting together and continue to put together work plans for each of the communities that are customized. And we're working with each of the communities to understand as we come out of the winter, what type of engagement would be appropriate in each of the local communities to facilitate this process. Next slide, please. And then lastly, our additional planning tasks, what we've identified within the communities we've been meeting with are, what are some things that might be particular to the communities that we can help address. You'll see a list up here. For all the communities, as part of the Housing Summit, we are doing this regional housing analysis with best practices. And to Leanne's earlier question about specific information in the Housing Summit, so the best practices information and the research that MKSK is doing as part of our TOD process is also something that we are working with the local communities to integrate not only into our TOD planning, but when additional education is needed, that information could be used as a tool there as well. We're doing land use and development impact analysis for Munster and for Portage specific to Burns Parkway right now. We're getting very close to wrapping those up. We're actually doing the same for Hammond, as well as looking at some corridor planning, conceptual street design for Main Street in Munster and Dyer. That will be a process that can inform the upcoming work that the MPO is funding along that corridor. We're working closely, as I mentioned, with AJ and his team in Portage on Burns Parkway, and then working with both Portage and Ogden Dunes, looking at the US 12 corridor and how to create more of a complete street that's safer through a conceptual street design for that area. And then we're working closely with Michigan City, looking at Franklin Street in particular, and how not only from a streetscape perspective, but from a traffic perspective, we can improve that corridor to hopefully entice more economic development. And then coming soon, we've been working with the town of Dyer on some potential additional development planning for a site that they would like to see to develop outside of the TOD area, but complementary to TOD. We're working with East Chicago, looking at the Roxana neighborhood, as well as Indianapolis Boulevard, and trying to get in front of some planned NDOT work there. We may be doing some additional neighborhood planning for Hammond, Michigan City, and Gary as we move forward too. So that's kind of a snapshot of where we are in the process. We've been making a lot of progress behind the scenes with the local communities. And like I said, we're kind of on the cusp of scheduling our next round of work sessions with various communities. Next slide, please. AJ, did you have a thought or comment?
No, I was just, no, we're good.
Okay. So I know we're kind of running a little bit short on time, so I won't use a lot of time here, but As we're working with the local communities as part of the Housing Summit, we also want to provide a high-level overview of TOD opportunities. So I mentioned the place types that we're developing. So the first place type that we're going to explore here is village mixed use. So this isn't the kind of the density that you would see in an area like downtown Hammond or downtown Michigan City, but instead more of a walkable village. Think more of that, 3 to 4 story buildings right around the station with a step down to complement neighborhoods adjacent. Here, specific to Munster Dyer Main Street, there is some joint development opportunity at the Main Street station site itself. We've mentioned the Main Street extension and how we're working closely with Munster and Dyer on that. We also feel that there are significant commercial and office development opportunities that could create an employment hub in this area. Next slide. Ridge Road is again another, as we think about a land use place type, a village mixed use area. And this really creates the follow-on development that supports the recent streetscape planning that the town has done for Ridge Road and Calumet, and that there could be mixed use development really concentrated around the station that really supports and creates an amenity for existing pretty dense traditional kind of grid type single family neighborhoods in the area. Next slide. Hammond Gateway and downtown. There's actually 2 different place types here. Around the Gateway area, it is more of a village mixed use TOD type. So really embracing walkability right around the station, as well as access to the station and from neighborhoods that are walkable, dense, kind of traditional grid pattern to this area. And then the downtown area is kind of a more of a downtown mixed TOD mixed with mixed use development. And we're really kind of bringing forward the Hammond downtown plan that was recently completed as really our guide for our recommendations in that downtown area. So that's that one. Next slide, please. East Chicago, we actually just had a great meeting with East Chicago yesterday. We think that this is a TOD supportive place. There could be more pure TOD kind of in a village fashion in a small area right near the station in the Roxana neighborhood. But we're really focusing on how we can make significant improvements to the Indianapolis Boulevard corridor to get in front of some work that both INDOT and the city are going to be kicking off here in the near future to create more of a walkable corridor, as well as a corridor that connects up to the Marquette Trail and provides good quality linkages kind of first and last mile to the station, as well as some walkable housing opportunities. Next slide. Gary Miller, again, we're meeting with the city on Friday, but we do believe in support of the previous TOD planning that they've done, that this is another village mixed use TOD place. You all know that there's been some improvements to US 20 and 12 with the conversion there, and we're looking to strengthen the walkability of this area, as well as really embrace the opportunity to develop in some sites right around the TOD area. Next slide, please. Portage, we've been working closely with AJ and his team to understand the future of Burns Parkway, as that could be extended in this area to provide access. This is another village mixed use TOD area.
Explain what it is and I'll just let you know.
That's already generated at least one RFP. So keep going, please. Michigan City is the last one we'll focus on. This has both a village mixed use and downtown TOD place type. The village mixed use place type is roughly south of 11th Street, so south of the station. And the city aspires to see more investment along the Franklin Street corridor, as well as to support the neighborhoods that are around it that will have great access to the station and the development occurring as part of the joint development at the 11th Street station. And then further north, it is that downtown mixed use TOD place type that's a little bit denser in nature. So that's, in a nutshell, some of the TOD work that we have underway. Wanted to provide you all with a quick update. And again, I think I'm collaborating with almost all of you on a fairly regular basis during this process. So I might hand it back to maybe AJ and Sherry to see if there's any questions. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Sherry, is there anything you wanted to say before we open it up for questions?
Nope, I think that we provided the information. So happy to answer any questions. I'm gonna go back on mute because I'm traveling. But again, happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
So with that said, members of the committee, do you have any questions about what was presented?
Hi,
I guess yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Leanne Mellon from Munster. I just, for the benefit of, for the public joining for this meeting, because there's so much that's being said about the planning and best practices, et cetera. I just want to, and this is what I understood way back when we started the process, what, four or more years ago, that these tools and examples and best practices would be laid out for the community, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what they must adopt. That ultimately it is still up to the community, because there are some things that one community might want, but another community may not have a desire to implement in their own, and that there is going to be even though there are economic tools offered, it does not mean that a community must follow a plan. And we're going to do a new comprehensive plan in Munster, and we're going to do a lot of outreach and community engagement to see what people really want our town to look like. And it may not look like TOD best practices. And I just want to get a confirmation here in this group that it is still up to the individual community to implement or not to implement those ideas that are presented.
Yeah. This is Sherry. I support Leanne, and this has been a collaborative process from the beginning. So we will continue to work with our communities on what you would like to see. So what this is, the transit development districts, it's a complement to your economic development goals. So together, they will work together, we will work together to help you to achieve those goals. And I can let Aaron speak to the best practices, but that's it just it's part of the process. It's part of showing you different thoughts, different options, I suppose. But I am clarifying. I hope that this is a partnership, and you know best. You all know best what you want in your communities, and we are here to help to get you there. So I'll go ahead. I know my background noise is distracting, so I'm going to throw it over to Aaron if you wanted to talk about best practices. If you wanted to address that part, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so Leanne, I think that's a really great question, and I appreciate that. So, of course, just to emphasize, the local units maintain local land use, zoning control. This TOD process is really meant, and that's why we're thinking of it as a strategic implementation process. And frankly, we're working really closely with each of our local government units to understand exactly what you all need, and everybody needs something a little different, and that's where we're focusing a lot of our time and attention. There is kind of an overarching best practice from a TOD perspective, but we're hopeful that in kind of this collaboration together, looking at development priorities, looking at infrastructure priorities, looking at realistic different densities of development that really match the needs of the communities, that this process will be informative in a way that, for instance, you all are going to update your comprehensive plan. And I think that's wonderful. definitely commend that. And I think our goal would be that at least a portion of the work that we bring forward here, if not integrated directly into your comprehensive plan, could be a really sound foundation for some of the recommendations that are brought forward in your comprehensive plan and ultimately supported by your local community. We're trying to listen, we're trying to learn from each of the communities. Everybody has different goals and needs. And so this is not a one size fits all approach. And that's something that we've been saying since the beginning. So I hope that's helpful. And our goal would be to do a good enough job for everybody so that there's information that is useful that you all can bring forward and that we can be answering critical questions that you all might have about TOD and density and other kind of priorities of the communities.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Great question. Appreciate the clarification. Are there any other questions regarding Aaron and Sherry's presentation? Hearing none, it looks like the next slide talks about next steps. And are there any other questions? So I guess I'll turn over to either Sherry or Aaron to talk about next steps.
Hi, AJ, it's Dave. I can handle that. Are there
Okay.
any other questions that don't pertain specifically to the TOD? You know, and if not, I just remind the committee that our next meeting is set for May 18th. We will continue to do these via Zoom until our facilities here in Crown Point are back to normal operations. Any other questions I can answer?
Yeah, I guess I have a question. Where do we stand with the transit development districts? Aaron mentioned in his presentation that the boundaries been, you know, many communities have reviewed them. There's a few that had some suggested amendments. What do the next steps and actions look like related to the establishment of the transit development districts?
I would turn that over to Aaron. Aaron, can you tell us where we stand right now?
Let me unmute, and then I may ask either maybe David or Bill to weigh in as well. So we have been working with the local units to confirm the boundaries. They are all still in draft format. So you all look at your boundaries, and if there's slight tweaks that still keep us under that 320 acres, we're happy to listen and to make those adjustments as necessary. As far as procedural next steps are concerned, once we, you know, kind of finalize any adjustments to the boundaries, it really is kind of then on the timeline of the RDA and kind of the process that's set forward by the statute on this process. So Bill, I don't know if you want to add to that.
No, I think you covered it well. Aaron, I think that the RDA board and attorneys and staff are working to set up the approval process, and it should be taking place in the next few months.
Thank you for that. I guess if I could, I'd also like to offer an update as a follow-up to something Aaron mentioned in his presentation. MKSK and the team has assisted us in putting together some graphics for an RFP that the Cities Redevelopment Commission advertised. We received 2 proposals at the January Redevelopment Commission meeting, and we're meeting later today to review those 2 proposals. They're 2 solid proposals, and we think that you know, very soon we'll be moving forward with one of them. And I guess as a reminder to the group, what we had advertised was seeking developer interest on a approximately 45-acre parcel at the northwest corner of Indiana 249 and Burns Parkway. So very close to the interchange at 249 and 94. For many of you, just north of the Nerve Sea offices on Southport Road. So we're very excited about the two proposals received, and we'll be moving forward with next steps here shortly. So I just wanted to offer an update on that and thank Aaron, his team, all the folks at the RDA for helping us to where we are today. Are there any other questions that the board has regarding anything presented today, or any other questions?
We are looking for you.
Hearing none, I believe this would be the time to call for a motion to adjourn.
There should be several different items on there. There's one that is for the Forge Recreation Area.
I'll make a motion to
And then
adjourn.
there's one for Gary's and stuff.
There's a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Parkway. You have all three of those? Okay, great. Just double check.
I can't second, but I can suggest that somebody second it.
Is there anyone on the committee willing to offer a second for a motion to adjourn?
I second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you one and all for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody have a great day.
Thank
You
you.
too.